Hey there, fellow history enthusiasts. Welcome to this gentle journey into the ancient world of Minoan Crete. If you're enjoying these tales of timeless craftsmanship, be sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below to share your thoughts. Let's ease into the story together. Like waves lapping at the shore under a golden sunset, imagine, if you will, the soft hum of the Aegean Sea brushing against the shores of Knossos, where the air carries a whisper of salt and wild herbs. It is the 19th to 16th century BCE, a time when the island of Crete thrived in quiet harmony with its rugged landscape. Here, in sun-dappled workshops, nestled among olive groves and terraced hills, lived the artisans we now call Minoan potters. These skilled hands, clad in simple linen tunics that fluttered like gentle breezes, shaped the very essence of daily life from humble clay. Picture them at work, their fingers tracing patterns in the cool, damp earth, as the warm light of midday filtered through thatched roofs, casting long, soothing shadows across their tools. The life of a Minoan potter was one of rhythmic creation, a dance between human ingenuity and the natural world. In those workshops, perhaps built from sun-baked mud bricks and cooled by the island's ever-present winds, the air was thick with the earthy scent of wet clay freshly dug from the riverbanks. It felt alive under their touch, slippery and yielding, like silk warmed by the sun, inviting endless possibilities. These artisans rose with the dawn, their days beginning as the first rays kissed the peaks of Mount Ida, illuminating their workspaces with a soft, golden glow. They donned their tunics, lightweight and breathable, woven from flax grown in the fertile valleys, and set to their tasks with a quiet focus that seemed to echo the steady rhythm of the sea. Their tools were simple yet masterful, honed over generations through observation and trial. A wooden wheel, perhaps turned by foot or hand, spun smoothly under their guidance, creating a hypnotic whirl that blended with the distant calls of seabirds. The potters would gather clay from nearby deposits, its texture gritty yet malleable, carrying hints of the minerals that gave it its rich, reddish hue. As they kneaded and shaped, the workshop filled with subtle sounds, the soft squelch of fingers pressing into the material, the gentle thud of a smoothing stone, and the faint crackle of a low fire in the kiln beyond. These sounds wove together like a lullaby, calming the mind and inviting a sense of peace amid the creative flow. In Knossos, the heart of Minoan civilization, pottery was more than mere utility. It was an expression of the soul's quiet ingenuity. The excavations at this ancient site, uncovered in the early 20th century by archaeologists like Sir Arthur Evans, reveal workshops buried under layers of time, their floors still marked by the imprints of tools and hearths. Linear tablets, those enigmatic clay inscriptions that whisper secrets we can only partially decipher, speak of administrative records and perhaps inventories of crafted goods. Though the script remains a mystery, it hints at the potter's integral role in society, products traded far and wide across the Mediterranean. Vessels for storing olive oil, wine, or grain emerged from their hands, elegant jars, adorned with swirling motifs of waves and spirals. Inspired by the sea and the island's natural beauty, a typical day for these artisans unfolded with a serene predictability. As the morning mist lifted from the valleys, they might begin by preparing their clay, mixing it with water drawn from nearby springs, the liquid cool and clear, carrying the faint taste of minerals from the earth. The process was meditative, each step a ritual of patience and precision. They would form the base of a pot, pressing and coiling the clay with steady hands, feeling its transformation from a formless lump to a vessel of purpose. The sun climbed higher, its warmth seeping into their skin, while sea breezes carried the scent of wild thyme and rosemary from the hillsides, mingling with the musty aroma of the drying clay. It was a sensory symphony, where the cool slip of wet earth against warm fingers evoked a deep, unspoken connection to the land. Creativity flowed freely in these workshops, unburdened by the clamor of conflict or haste. The potters drew inspiration from the world around them, the undulating patterns of olive leaves, the graceful curves of seashells, or the vibrant hues of sunsets over the sea. They decorated their pieces with intricate designs, using pigments derived from natural sources: ochre for earthy reds, malachite for subtle greens, all applied with brushes made from animal hair or feathers. The result was pottery that was both functional and artistic, vessels that held not just liquids, but stories of human endeavor. In the evenings, as the sky turned a soft lavender, the potters might gather around low fires, sharing quiet words or simply listening to the night's gentle sounds. Their day's work firing slowly in the kilns, the heat radiating like a comforting embrace. Yet, amid this tapestry of daily life, there lingers a tender mystery that adds a layer of intrigue to their story. The names of these potters, etched not in stone or script, but in the very clay they shaped, have faded into the mists of time. Linear tablets, those fragile records from Knossos, list commodities and perhaps workshops, but they offer no personal signatures, no tales of individual glory. Who were these anonymous creators? Did they pass down their skills through families, their identities woven into the lineage of generations? The excavations reveal tools and fragments, but the human stories remain elusive, like shadows dancing in the firelight. It is a peaceful enigma, one that invites us to ponder the beauty of forgotten lives, their creativity enduring long after their names have dissolved into the Aegean winds. As the seasons turned in Minoan Crete, the potters adapted to the island's rhythms. In spring, when wildflowers blanketed the hills, they might experiment with new glazes, incorporating crushed shells for a subtle sheen that caught the light like dewdrops. Summer brought longer days, allowing for extended sessions at the wheel, the air heavy with the scent of sun, warmed stone, and blooming myrtle. Autumn's harvest time saw them crafting storage jars for the bounty of olives and grapes, each piece a testament to the cycle of nature. And in winter, when rains soften the earth, they might mend tools or plan future designs, the workshop a haven against the chill, filled with the comforting glow of oil lamps and the faint, woody aroma of burning olive pits. The sensory details of their world were profound and intimate. The clay itself held memories of the soil, its cool, moist surface evoking the feel of a fresh stream bed, while the finished pots, once fired, carried a satisfying weight and a smooth, polished finish that invited the touch. The sea breezes, carrying whispers of distant shores, cooled their brows as they worked, and the occasional rustle of leaves outside added a natural cadence to their efforts. These elements combined to create an atmosphere of tranquil productivity, where creativity was not a struggle, but a harmonious extension of existence through the lens of Knossos' archaeological treasures. We glimpse how these potters contributed to a society that valued artistry and innovation. Their workshops, unearthed with fragments of pottery still bearing faint linear markings, suggest a community where craft was communal and revered. No grand palaces or royal intrigues intrude here. Instead, we focus on the humble yet profound act of creation, where each pot was a small miracle of human hands. As we draw near the close of this serene exploration, let your mind drift with the thought that every piece of Minoan pottery unearthed today carries the echo of those unseen artisans. Their legacy, though nameless, endures in the curves and colors that speak of a world long past. And if this gentle tale has stirred your curiosity, perhaps you'll join me next as we turn to another facet of this ancient tapestry. Until then, may your dreams be as peaceful as the sea at dawn. In the hushed glow of a Cretan dawn, where the first light kissed the terraced roofs of Knossos, the air carried the faint salt tang of the sea and the whisper of waves against distant shores. The palace stood as a monument to ancient splendor, its walls adorned with frescoes of vivid blues and earthy reds, depicting graceful dolphins and spiraling vines that seemed to dance in the morning haze. Here, in this realm of myth and mortar, King Minos reigned with a quiet authority, his presence a soothing rhythm in the ebb and flow of trade that bound the Mediterranean world. Minos, clad in robes dyed the deep purple of murex shells, moved through the grand halls with a measured grace, his footsteps echoing softly against polished marble floors. The color of his attire spoke of wealth drawn from the sea's bounty, a hue reserved for kings who commanded the waves and the winds. As he oversaw the bustling exchange of goods, jars of olive oil from the hills, fine linens from Egypt, and ingots of tin from distant lands, his voice was a gentle murmur, calm as the lapping tide. Merchants from afar gathered in the palace courtyards, their negotiations a low hum beneath the arching columns, where the air was laced with the scent of myrrh and sun-warmed stone. In those days of the 17th century BCE, Crete flourished under Minos' watchful eye. A civilization woven from threads of legend and reality, Homeric tales, passed down through generations, painted him as a ruler blessed by the gods, a son of Zeus, whose wisdom extended beyond mortal bounds. He sat upon his throne, a simple yet imposing seat of carved gypsum, surrounded by advisors, whose whispers blended with the soft rustle of palm fronds in the breeze. The palace, with its labyrinthine yet orderly layout, avoiding the darker myths, served as the heart of his domain, a place where decisions shaped the fate of islands and seas. Sensory memories lingered in every corner. The cool touch of marble underfoot, smoothed by centuries of tread, and the faint flicker of oil lamps that cast golden hues across the frescoed walls. These images, drawn from archaeological whispers of Sir Arthur Evans's excavations, revealed a world of intricate artistry, where the colors of the mural's crimson poppies and azure skies evoked a peace that belied the complexities of rule. Minos, in his dyed robes, embodied this harmony, his gestures deliberate and unhurried as he directed the flow of commerce. Ships laden with Cretan wares pottery, glazed with iridescent sheens. Though we leave the potter's craft untouched, sailed forth under his decree, forging alliances that echoed through time. Yet beneath this serene facade lay the mystery of Minos' true identity, an enigma as elusive as the shifting sea mists. Was he merely a man, elevated by Homeric verse to divine status, or a figure born of the gods themselves? Archaeological reports from Knossos suggest a historical king, perhaps a series of rulers amalgamated into one legendary name, their palaces testifying to a sophisticated society that thrived without the need for shadowy tales. In the quiet of his chambers, where the air grew heavy with the aroma of pressed herbs and the distant call of seabirds, Minos contemplated the depths of his lineage. Some whispered he was the offspring of Europa, carried across the waves by Zeus in the form of a bull, a story that lent his rule an otherworldly sheen. Others, drawing from the same ancient texts, pondered if he was a mortal elevated by deeds, his establishment of laws and trade routes, a testament to human ingenuity rather than divine intervention. As the sun climbed higher, casting a warm veil over the palace, Minos walked the open-air corridors, the stone beneath him radiating a gentle heat that soothed the senses. The frescoes around him, with their depictions of lithe figures in ritual procession, seemed to pulse with life, their colors a symphony of earth tones that invited reflection. He oversaw the weighing of goods in the courtyards, where the clink of bronze scales mingled with the soft chatter of traders, each transaction a thread in the tapestry of his kingdom's prosperity. This was no tyrant's grip, but a benevolent oversight where fairness prevailed, as chronicled in the epics that celebrated his justice. In the evenings, as shadows lengthened and the palace grew still, Minos retreated to his private sanctum, a room lined with seashells and artifacts from voyages past. The air there carried a subtle fragrance of cedar and salt, evoking the vastness of the seas he commanded. It was in these moments that the mystery deepened. For who could truly know the man behind the legend? Homeric accounts, such as those in the Odyssey, portrayed him as a judge in the underworld, his wisdom eternal. Yet the ruins of Knossos reveal a more earthly sovereign. Perhaps his identity was a blend, a historical figure mythologized by poets to inspire awe, his dyed robes and regal bearing symbols of a culture that bridged the divine and the mundane through the seasons. Crete's trade networks expanded, carrying Minos' influence to far-off shores. Vessels returned with tales of foreign lands, their holds filled with exotic spices whose aromas wafted through the palace halls, mingling with the earthy scent of local herbs. He listened to emissaries in the great hall, where the acoustics carried their words like a gentle breeze. Each negotiation a careful dance that maintained peace. The sensory richness of his world, the play of light on frescoed walls, the cool whisper of marble under palm, was a constant reminder of his legacy, a rule that fostered growth without the shadows of conflict. Yet, even in prosperity, the enigma persisted. Was Minos a singular king, or a title passed down, as suggested by the layers of palace construction unearthed by modern scholars? The mystery, distinct and untouched by other tales, invited quiet contemplation, a puzzle woven into the fabric of Cretan history. In the soft glow of twilight, as the stars emerged above the palace, one might ponder how such a figure could command both the seas and the hearts of his people. His true essence, as fluid as the tides. As the night deepened, with the distant hum of the sea lulling the palace to rest, Minos' story flowed onward, a calming narrative of wisdom and wonder. The dyed robes he wore, their purple depths reflecting the setting sun, symbolized not just wealth, but the enduring spirit of a land where myth and reality intertwined. In this serene realm, free from the echoes of other segments, his legend endured, a soothing melody in the annals of time. And so, as the palace settled into silence, the tale of King Minos fades gently, paving the way for whispers of what may come next. In the unfolding tapestry of ancient Crete, in the soft glow of a Cretan afternoon, where the Aegean sun draped the hills in a blanket of warm light, a quiet workshop nestled within the shadows of Knossos hummed with the rhythm of ancient hands at work. The air carried the faint, earthy scent of sun-baked clay, mingled with the subtle tang of olive oil lamps flickering in the corners. Here, in the heart of the 17th century BCE, a group of scribes moved with deliberate grace, their simple tunics of linen whispering against their skin as they bent over low wooden tables. Each one was a guardian of secrets, etching symbols into soft tablets that would outlast the fleeting moments of their lives. The scribes were unassuming figures, their faces etched with lines of concentration that spoke of years spent in this tranquil pursuit. One, an elder with a neatly trimmed beard, dusted in fine particles from the clay, selected a fresh tablet from a pile stacked neatly beside him. His fingers, calloused yet gentle, pressed into the cool, pliable surface, feeling its yielding texture like the flesh of a ripe fig. With a stylus carved from ivory, he began to inscribe the mysterious lines, the tool scratching softly against the clay, a sound like distant waves lapping at the shore, rhythmic and soothing. It was a melody of creation, each stroke deliberate, as if the symbols themselves were breathing life into the silent material around him. The workshop was a haven of calm, far removed from the bustling life beyond its walls. The floor, smoothed by generations of footfalls, was scattered with fragments of broken tablets, their edges worn like ancient whispers. The air was thick with the musty aroma of drying clay, a comforting scent that evoked the island's fertile earth, warmed by the sun and kissed by sea breezes. A young scribe, his tunic tied loosely at the waist, paused to mix a fresh batch of clay in a shallow basin, the wet substance squelching between his fingers in a tactile symphony that grounded him in the present. He hummed a low, tuneless melody under his breath, a subtle wit in his eyes as he imagined the clay's journey from the riverbanks to this very room. These inscriptions, formed in the enigmatic script known as linear A, danced across the tablets in neat rows, their curves and angles a puzzle that even the scribes themselves could not fully unravel. Each symbol was a stroke of mystery, perhaps recording inventories of olive oil or grains, or maybe tallying the flocks that grazed the hillsides. The Knossos excavations, centuries later, would reveal hundreds of such tablets, unearthed from the ruins of what once was a thriving palace complex, their surfaces preserving the echoes of a civilization long vanished. Yet in this moment, the scribes worked without the burden of posterity, their focus inward, on the precise pressure of the stylus and the faint warmth of the clay beneath their palms. As the elder scribe continued, his movements were almost meditative, the stylus gliding with a whisper that blended into the ambient hush. One could almost hear the clay's quiet protest, a soft crackle as it dried, releasing a whisper of dust that hung in the air like a fine mist. The room was bathed in the golden hue of late afternoon light, filtering through narrow windows, casting long shadows that played across the walls, adorned with faded frescoes of marine motifs, dolphins leaping, waves curling. These images, though worn, added a layer of serenity, reminding the scribes of the sea's eternal rhythm, a counterpoint to their inland labors. Linear A, with its undeciphered forms, remained a veil over the Minoan world, a script that eluded even the most scholarly minds in later ages. The scribes inscribed it without question, their wit surfacing in the occasional shared glance or a murmured jest, about a particularly stubborn symbol that refused to align just so. This one twists like the olive branches in the wind. The young scribe might say with a faint smile, his voice low and lulling, as if sharing a secret with the clay itself. They knew not what future eyes would make of their work, nor did they ponder the script's origins, which scholars would one day trace to the palaces of Crete, including the vast complex at Knossos. There, amid the ruins, tablets like these had been found in storerooms, hinting at a sophisticated administrative system that managed the island's resources with quiet efficiency. The process was one of patient repetition, each tablet a canvas for the unknown. The elder scribe dipped his stylus into a small dish of water to keep it smooth. The liquid's cool touch a brief respite against his skin, evoking the freshness of a mountain spring. As he worked, the scratching sound persisted, a gentle cadence that wove through the air, interspersed with the occasional rustle of tunics as his companion shifted position. The young scribe, now inscribing his own tablet, felt the clay's grainy texture under his fingertips, a sensory anchor that made the abstract symbols feel tangible, almost alive. It was as if the material held memories of the earth from which it came, carrying the faint, salty undertone of the sea that surrounded Crete. In this workshop, time flowed like the lazy current of a river, unmarked by the clamor of the outside world. The scribes rarely spoke, their communication a language of gestures and shared understanding, punctuated only by the soft exhalations of breath as they leaned closer to their work. One might pause to brush away a speck of dust, the fine particles dancing in a beam of sunlight, creating a momentary sparkle that added a touch of whimsy to the scene. It was a subtle reminder of the script's enduring enigma symbols that, to this day, resist full translation, their meanings lost in the mists of time. Yet in their creation, there was a calming beauty, a ritual that connected the scribes to something greater, perhaps the very essence of their culture. Historical fragments from Knossos suggest that linear was not merely a tool, but a thread in the fabric of Minoan society, used for record keeping in a world where trade flourished and palaces rose like crowns upon the landscape. The scribes, drawing from this tradition, inscribed tablets that might have detailed the exchange of goods, perhaps the weight of copper ingots, or the count of woven textiles. The air in the workshop carried a faint herbal note from the thyme and lavender growing nearby, infusing the space with a natural perfume that soothed the senses. As the sun dipped lower, casting a warm amber glow, the elder scribe reflected inwardly on the symbols' patterns, their repetition a comforting rhythm, like the heartbeat of the island itself. Despite the mystery shrouding linear, the scribes found solace in their craft, their tunics soft against their bodies as they moved with unhurried precision. The stylus's scratch was a constant companion, a sound that evoked the gentle erosion of stone by the sea, wearing away the unknown one's stroke at a time. In the quiet moments, one could imagine the clay tablets as silent storytellers, waiting for a future when their secrets might be unlocked. Yet for now, they remained enigmatic, their undeciphered forms a testament to the Minoan's ingenuity. Preserved in the excavations at Knossos that revealed layers of a civilization built on harmony with nature. As evening approached, the workshop grew dimmer, the lamp's flames flickering with a soft hiss, their light dancing across the inscribed surfaces. The young scribe set aside his tablet, wiping his hands on a cloth that smelled of aged linen, and exchanged a knowing look with his elder. There was a subtle wit in their shared silence, an acknowledgement that some mysteries were meant to endure, like the eternal waves or the steadfast hills. And as the day faded, the scribes prepared to rest, their work a lullaby of ancient whispers, leading gently toward the next unfolding of Crete's storied past. In the hushed embrace of twilight, the ancient halls of Knossos stirred with a rhythm as old as the Cretan hills themselves. Here, in the heart of a Minoan palace from the 17th century BCE, life unfolded like a dream, woven from threads of gold and azure. The air, heavy with the sweet scent of pressed olives and fermenting wine, whispered secrets through corridors lined with vibrant frescoes. Imagine, if you will, the soft flicker of oil lamps casting warm glows upon walls adorned with leaping dolphins and graceful figures, their colors as alive as the sea beyond the palace gates. It was a world of quiet splendor, where the elite moved with the ease of waves upon the shore, their days a tapestry of ritual and repose. The palace rose like a labyrinthine jewel from the earth, its multi-storied structure a marvel of stone and timber, built upon layers of history that archaeologists like Sir Arthur Evans would one day uncover with careful hands. In these grand spaces, the highborn gathered, draped in robes of saffron and crimson, fabrics dyed from the crushed shells of sea snails, and woven with threads finer than a spider's silk. A woman of noble birth might adjust her garment, the soft wool brushing against her skin like a gentle breeze. As she prepared for the evening's feast, the halls, with their polished floors of gypsum and walls alive with painted scenes of bulls and flowers, echoed with the murmur of voices, low and melodic, like the distant call of birds at dawn. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the elite assembled in the great hall, a vast chamber where light from oil lamps danced upon the air. These lamps, their wicks soaked in fragrant olive oil, released a warm, earthy aroma that mingled with the sharper notes of herbs crushed for the meal. Picture the scene. Men and women reclining on low couches, upholstered in dyed leather, their faces softened by the golden light. A server, dressed in simpler linen, but moving with graceful precision, poured wine from tall jars into goblets of clay, fired to a glossy sheen. The liquid's rich bouquet of wild grapes and sun-warmed earth filling the room. The wine slid smoothly over the tongue, a subtle warmth that invited conversation to flow as freely as the Aegean tides. In this opulent realm, meals were more than sustenance. They were ceremonies of abundance. Tables groaned under platters of roasted meats, lamb, and wild boar, seasoned with fennel and thyme. Their savory scents rising like incense to the painted ceilings, fresh figs and pomegranates, their juices bursting forth with each bite, added notes of tart sweetness to the air. The elite savored these delicacies with deliberate slowness, their fingers tracing the edges of bowls decorated with spiral motifs, symbols of eternity etched by artisans whose skills had been passed down through generations. A hint of wit lingered in their exchanges, like the playful glint of a dolphin in the frescoes. One might jest about the day's hunt, comparing it to the mythical leaps of bulls, though such tales were spoken lightly, without the weight of legend. Beyond the feasting halls, the palace hummed with the quiet industry of daily life, all filtered through the lens of privilege. Courtyards opened to the sky, where fountains trickled water through stone channels, a testament to the Minoan's ingenuity in plumbing. As revealed in the ruins Evans excavated, the sound of water, a soft, persistent murmur, blended with the faint rustle of palm fronds in the breeze, creating a symphony that lulled the senses. Here, the elite might stroll, their robes swaying gently, admiring gardens where crocuses bloomed in profusion, their petals releasing a delicate, honeyed fragrance. The air carried the salty tang of the sea, a reminder that Knossos was not isolated, but connected to a vast network of trade, bringing in luxuries like ivory from Egypt and lapis, lazuli from afar. Yet amid this prosperity, a shadow of mystery wove through the palace's corridors, the enigma of lost treasures that time had buried beneath layers of earth and forgetfulness. Archaeological reports from sites like Knossos speak of vaults once filled with gold ornaments and seals inscribed with intricate scripts, items that vanished into the annals of history. One might ponder in the quiet hours how these riches, perhaps hidden in secret chambers or spirited away during unrest, eluded the grasp of invaders and explorers alike. It was a gentle puzzle, not one of violence, but of vanished splendor, like a melody fading into the night. Evans himself noted the absence of such artifacts in his digs, suggesting they were concealed or carried off, leaving only faint impressions in the soil, a subtle intrigue that added a layer of depth to the palace's serene facade. As the evening deepened, the elite retired to private chambers where the air grew still and the oil lamps cast elongated shadows on the walls. These rooms, with their plastered surfaces and niches holding small statuettes of goddesses, offered a sanctuary of comfort. A bed of woven reeds, covered in soft fleeces, invited rest. The faint scent of lavender from nearby fields seeping in through open windows. Here, one could listen to the distant hum of the palace settling, the creak of timber beams a soothing counterpoint to the day's vibrancy. Subtle wit might surface in whispered stories, tales of traders who brought exotic spices, their aromas lingering like elusive dreams, cinnamon and myrrh that evoked far-off lands without the need for travel. The palace's design, with its light wells and ventilation shafts, ensured that even in the warmth of summer, the interiors remained cool and inviting, a feat that modern eyes might admire with quiet wonder. Sensory details abounded. The cool touch of marble underfoot, the visual feast of frescoes depicting processions of figures in vivid hues, and the auditory backdrop of soft footsteps on flagged floors. It was a life of measured grace, where every element conspired to create an atmosphere of peaceful abundance. Yet the passage of time lent a certain melancholy to this world, as if the palace itself whispered of impermanence. Archaeological evidence from Knossos reveals how earthquakes and fires eventually claimed this civilization. But in these narratives, we focus not on the fall, but on the lingering echo of its heights. The lost treasures, perhaps sealed in undiscovered caches, serve as a reminder that some mysteries endure, waiting for the patient hand of discovery. In the quiet aftermath of such evenings, as the oil lamps dimmed and the aromas of the feast faded into memory, one could almost feel the thread of history connecting past to present. And so, from the opulent halls of Knossos, we turn our gaze forward to the echoes of what came next, where new stories await in the shadows of time. In the soft light of dawn over ancient Crete, the workshops of Knossos stirred to life like a gentle whisper through the olive groves. The air carried a faint chill, yielding to the promise of a warm day, as artisans in simple linen tunics emerged from their modest dwellings. These Minoan potters, masters of their craft in the 17th century BCE, moved with a rhythm as old as the island itself, their hands shaped by years of turning earth into enduring forms. The excavations at Knossos reveal fragments of this world's shards of vases and clay tablets etched with faint patterns. But the true essence of their daily routines remains a quiet dance, felt more than fully known. As the sun climbed higher, the potters gathered in the open-air workshops, their feet padding softly on packed earth floors, dusted with fine clay particles. The air thickened with the earthy scent of moist soil mixed with water, a soothing aroma that lingered like a mother's embrace. Each artisan wore a tunic dyed in muted ochres and blues, the fabric loose and practical, allowing for the fluid motions required of their work. They began by selecting clay from large storage pits, dug deep into the ground, as the Knossos findings suggest, where the material lay cool and pliable, waiting to be transformed. With deliberate care, a potter would kneel beside a low wooden wheel, its simple spindle mechanism creaking faintly as it was set in motion. The wheel spun slowly at first, a low hum that blended with the distant calls of seabirds from the Cretan coast. Fingers dusted in fine, silken clay particles pressed into the lump of earth, shaping it with a tenderness that belied the strength behind each touch. One could almost hear the clay yielding, a soft whisper of resistance giving way to form. As vases took shape under skilled hands, the process was methodical, almost meditative, each rotation of the wheel marking the passage of time in a way that felt eternal, like the ebb and flow of the sea beyond the hills. Throughout the morning, the workshop hummed with activity, yet it was a calm symphony, free of haste. Potters worked in pairs or alone, their tunics occasionally catching the light as they leaned over their creations. The scent of the clay mingled with the faint, smoky tang from nearby kilns, where fires were stoked with olive wood and dried herbs. These kilns, as unearthed at Knossos, were beehive-shaped structures of mud brick, their interiors glowing with a warm, amber light that cast long shadows across the workspace. One potter might pause to test the clay's consistency, running a thumb over its surface, feeling the cool, slick texture that promised strength once fired. Another would smooth the edges of a burgeoning vase, the tool a simple bone scraper, gliding with a whisper-soft sound, leaving behind a surface as smooth as polished stone. As midday approached, the routines shifted subtly, like the sun traversing the sky. Breaks were informal, guided by the light and the body's needs rather than any rigid schedule. Perhaps a potter would step outside to sip water from a clay jug, the cool liquid refreshing against the growing warmth of the day. The air was alive with sensory details, the rhythmic thump of mallets pounding clay to remove air pockets, the gentle patter of droplets as water was sprinkled to keep the material workable, and the faint, powdery haze of dust that danced in sunbeams, filtering through thatched roofs. It was in these moments that the mystery of their unrecorded work schedules wove through the day, a subtle enigma preserved in the silence of history. Unlike the grand palaces and their inscribed tablets, the potter's rhythms left no trace in stone or script, vanishing into the ether like mist over the mountains, leaving us to wonder how they measured their hours by the sun's arc, the wheel's spin, or some inner cadence known only to them. In the afternoon, the focus turned to refinement. Artisans adorned their vases with intricate patterns, drawing from the motifs seen in Knossos, artifacts, spirals, and marine designs that evoked the sea's endless waves. A potter might dip a brush made from animal hair into a slurry of pigments derived from local minerals, the earthy colors blending seamlessly with the clay's natural tones. The act was almost hypnotic, the brush strokes flowing in a steady cadence, accompanied by the soft rustle of fabric as tunics shifted with each movement. The air grew warmer, carrying the comforting scent of baking clay from the kilns, an aroma that hinted at transformation, as raw earth hardened into vessels meant to hold wine or oil for feasts and daily use. Yet, even in this serene cycle, there were whispers of the world beyond the workshop. The potters, as historical records from Knossos imply, were integral to Minoan society, their creations gracing palaces and homes alike. But their days unfolded without the clamor of conflict or the weight of grand events. A detached observation that allows us to appreciate the consequences without dwelling on hardship. If a kiln fire faltered, it meant a loss of effort, not tragedy, and the potters would simply begin anew. Their resilience, a quiet wit in the face of uncertainty. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, the routines wound down with the same gentle pace. Vessels were set aside to dry, their surfaces cooling under the evening breeze, and tools were cleaned with water from nearby streams, the liquid carrying away the day's accumulated dust. The workshop fell into a peaceful hush, the spinning wheels at rest, their earlier hum now a memory echoing in the fading light. It was here, in the closing hours, that the mystery deepened. The uncharted schedules of these artisans, never etched into the linear scripts or chronicled in tales, remained a tantalizing shadow. How did they decide when to end their labors? Was it the lengthening shadows, the call of family, or an unspoken agreement among peers? The Knossos excavations offer glimpses, but the full story slips away, like sand through fingers, inviting a subtle smile at the secrets time guards so well. In this way, the day in the potter's workshop was a tapestry of simple wonders, woven with threads of earth and air. The sensory details: the cool slip of clay, the warm glow of fire, the rhythmic sounds of creation, painted a picture of a life, both ordinary and profound. As night fell over Crete, the artisans retired, their tunics folded away, ready for another dawn. And yet, one might ponder, as the stars emerged above the ancient ruins, what other routines hid in the folds of history, waiting to be uncovered in the segments that follow. In the soft light of a Cretan dawn, where the river meandered through ancient valleys like a silver thread woven into the earth, Minoan potters stirred from their simple dwellings. It was the 17th century BCE, a time when the island breathed with the rhythms of nature and craft, far from the clamor of workshops or the grandeur of palaces. These artisans, clad in loose tunics of woven wool that fluttered gently in the breeze, set out with quiet purpose to gather the earth's most humble gift, clay. Their journey unfolded along the riverbanks, where the water whispered secrets, and the air carried the faint saltiness of the sea, inviting a sense of peace to settle over the scene like a warm blanket. The potters moved with a deliberate grace, their bare feet sinking into the cool, damp soil that lined the river's edge. Men and women alike, their skin bronzed by the Mediterranean sun, carried baskets woven from reeds, slung over shoulders that bore the quiet strength of generations. The riverbank was a tapestry of textures, the mud squelching underfoot with a satisfying give, coating their hands in a slick, earthy embrace as they knelt to dig. Each handful of clay felt alive, cool and pliable, its minerals whispering of ancient seabeds and volcanic whispers from long-forgotten eruptions. The air was alive with subtle scents, the sharp, mineral tang of wet earth mingling with the distant brine of the Cretan Sea, carried inland on a gentle wind that rustled the olive leaves overhead as they worked. The potters hummed low tunes, melodies as old as the island itself, their voices blending with the river's steady murmur. One might pause to wipe a bead of sweat from their brow, leaving a streak of grayish mud across their face like a warrior's mark. Though here it spoke only of patient labor, the sun climbed higher, casting a golden glow that warmed the air without harshness, and the potter's movements became a dance of sorts. Rhythmic and unhurried, they tested the clay between their fingers, feeling its fine grain, its readiness to be shaped into vessels that would hold water or wine. Symbols of daily life in this flourishing civilization. Historical accounts from archaeological digs at sites like the river valleys near Knossos reveal that Minoan potters were masters of their environment, selecting clays with an instinct honed over centuries. Reports from excavations, such as those conducted by Sir Arthur Evans and later scholars, describe deposits rich in kaolin and montmorillonite, perfect for the fine pottery that defined Minoan artistry. Yet even in these records, there lingers a mystery, a veil over the exact sources that the potters favored. Why were these locations never fully documented in the linear scripts or the artifacts left behind? Perhaps it was a guarded secret, passed down through oral traditions that dissolved with time. Or maybe the potters saw no need to record what the earth so freely offered. This enigma adds a layer of intrigue, like a faint shadow in the sunlight, inviting one to ponder the lost knowledge that once flowed as naturally as the river itself. The artisans dug deeper, their tunics now speckled with clay, the fabric clinging slightly to their forms in the humid air. The sensation of the mud was almost meditative, its coolness seeping into their skin, a tactile reminder of the island's fertile embrace. Birds called from the nearby cypress trees, their songs weaving through the atmosphere like threads of silk, while the distant crash of waves against the coast provided a soothing backdrop. One potter, an elder with lines etched into his face like the whorls of a pot, might have shared a wry smile at the way the clay stuck to his nails, remarking in his mind how it mirrored the stubbornness of the sea itself, always present, always yielding just enough. In those moments, the potters embodied a harmony with nature that modern eyes might envy. They knew the riverbanks not as mere resources, but as living entities, their clays varying with the seasons. In spring, the deposits were softer, enriched by winter rains that carried sediments from the hills, while summer brought harder, more refined earth that promised durability. Archaeological evidence from surveys around the Geropotamos River and other Cretan waterways supports this, showing layers of sediment that the potters expertly identified. Yet the mystery persists. Why did some sources remain uncharted? Were they sacred spots, perhaps tied to rituals that left no trace, or simply practical choices lost to erosion and time? This uncertainty lends a gentle allure to their work, a subtle puzzle that invites reflection without urgency. As the morning wore on, the potters filled their baskets, the weight growing familiar in their arms. The clay's earthy aroma intensified with each scoop, a grounding scent that mingled with the floral hints of wild thyme blooming nearby. They paused occasionally to rinse their hands in the river's cool flow, the water slipping over their fingers like liquid silk, carrying away the grime and leaving a refreshed tingling. In these quiet interludes, one could almost hear the island's heartbeat, a steady pulse in the rustle of leaves and the lap of water against stones. The potter's wit surfaced in soft exchanges, a murmured jest about how the clay seemed to cling more stubbornly on hot days, as if protesting the sun's warmth with its own sticky resolve. Further along the bank, where the river widened into gentle pools, the potters encountered variations in the clay's composition. Some patches were redder, infused with iron oxides that would lend a warm hue to future pots, while others were paler, almost ethereal, hinting at the volcanic origins of Crete's soil. Scholars like those from the Heraclean Archaeological Museum have pieced together how these differences influenced Minoan designs. Yet, the precise locations elude full understanding. This mystery, woven into the fabric of their daily tasks, serves as a reminder that not all knowledge was meant for tablets or tombs. Some secrets belong to the earth alone. The sun reached its zenith, casting a hazy glow that softened the landscape, and the potters began to wrap up their gathering. Their tunics, now mud-streaked and worn, felt like second skins, comfortable in their disarray. The air grew warmer, carrying the faint, salty whisper of the sea more strongly, as if beckoning them back toward their villages. In this rhythm of work and rest, there was a calming poetry, a lullaby of labor that spoke to the enduring spirit of the Minoans. One might imagine a young apprentice, eyes wide with wonder, tracing the patterns in the clay and pondering the unseen forces that shaped it. Adding a touch of subtle humor to the scene, how even the earth played its own games, hiding treasures just out of reach. As they prepared to depart, baskets balanced on shoulders, the potters cast a final glance at the riverbank, its surface now marked by their footprints. The mystery of those unrecorded sources lingered, a gentle enigma that would follow them home, perhaps to be pondered under the stars. Yet for now, the day held its peace, a serene interlude in the tapestry of Minoan life. And as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the water, one could feel the transition approaching, a soft bridge to the next chapter of their world, where the gathered clay would await its transformation. In the quiet aftermath, the river continued its flow, carrying whispers of the past into the vast Aegean, reminding all who listened that some stories, like the finest clay, are meant to be shaped with care and left to endure in the fading light of a Cretan evening, where the sea whispered against the rocky shores and the hills slumbered under a blanket of olive trees. The Minoan potters gathered at their ancient stone kilns. It was the 17th century before the Common Era, a time when the air carried the faint salt of the Mediterranean, and the earth held secrets of creation. These artisans, draped in simple tunics of woven wool dyed in earthy hues, moved with a quiet rhythm, their hands shaped by generations of fire and clay as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the terraced slopes near Knossos. They prepared to breathe life into their vases, transforming raw forms into enduring vessels through the dance of flame and patience. The kilns themselves stood as sturdy monuments, carved from the island's native limestone and reinforced with river stones, their domed structures rising like small hills against the landscape, each one perhaps 3 paces wide and twice as tall, had been built upon the foundations of earlier designs, as revealed in the excavations at Knossos, where archaeologists uncovered similar relics buried under layers of time. The potters approached with reverence, their tunics brushing against the warm stone as they checked the vents and flues, ensuring the airflow was just right for the firing process. One by one, they lifted the vase's elegant shapes, adorned with swirling motifs of waves and beasts, from their drying racks, handling them as if they were fragile dreams. A gentle breeze carried the first wisps of smoke as the fires were kindled, the wood crackling softly like distant whispers. The artisans stacked the vases carefully inside the kiln's chamber, layering them on shelves of baked clay to allow the heat to embrace each piece evenly. They used techniques honed from the Minoan mastery, drawing on methods that echoed the findings at Knossos, where evidence of controlled firing suggested a sophisticated understanding of temperature and oxidation. The fires began with dried olive branches and thyme-scented twigs, their flames licking upward in a soft glow that painted the potters' faces with warm amber light. One potter, his tunic sleeves rolled to reveal sun-darkened arms, paused to adjust a vent, his movements deliberate and unhurried, as if coaxing a child to sleep. As the kiln heated, the air grew thick with the scent of burning resins and the earthy aroma of clay awakening. The potters sat nearby, their tunics spread like pools of shadow on the ground, sharing quiet words in the ancient tongue that flowed like a lullaby through the dusk. They monitored the process with simple tools, long poles tipped with clay paddles to stir the embers, and peepholes sealed with mud that they occasionally cracked open to gauge the fire's progress. The heat radiated outward, a comforting warmth that chased away the evening chill, while the faint hum of the flames provided a soothing backdrop, like the steady breath of the earth itself. In these moments, the mystery of their craft deepened, for not all secrets of the Minoan kilns had survived the ages, as Knossos' ruins attest. certain firing methods, perhaps involving rare minerals or precise timing under the stars, had vanished, leaving only tantalizing traces in the charred remains of ancient pottery. The vases, once placed within the kiln's heart, underwent a transformation that blended art and alchemy. The potters fed the fire with measured handfuls of charcoal and dried sea plants, controlling the burn to achieve the desired shades and strengths. For the finer pieces, they aimed for a low oxygen environment, sealing the kiln partially to create reducing conditions, a technique inferred from the oxidized and reduced surfaces found in Knosso's artifacts. The clay glowed softly, its surfaces shifting from dull gray to vibrant reds and blacks. As the heat worked its quiet magic, one could almost hear the vases sighing as they hardened, the air filled with the subtle perfume of baking earth and the distant call of night birds. The potters, with their tunics lightly dusted in ash, exchanged knowing glances, their subtle wit emerging in murmured jests about the fire's temperament, like an old friend who needed gentle persuasion. Through the long hours, the process unfolded with a lullaby like cadence. The flames danced in rhythmic patterns, their light flickering across the stone walls of the kiln like fireflies in a summer grove. Sensory memories wove through the scene, the crisp snap of wood yielding to heat, the warm caress of air on skin, the faint metallic tang that lingered after a fresh load of fuel. Historical accounts from Knossos suggest that these Minoans had mastered such firing centuries before, their kilns representing an evolution from earlier pit fires, yet always with an element of uncertainty. What precise blend of fuels produced the legendary luster on their vases, or how did they predict the exact moment when the clay reached its peak, avoiding the cracks that could shatter a piece in an instant? These questions formed the core of a gentle mystery, one that invited reflection rather than urgency, as if the lost methods were dreams half remembered in the pre-dawn haze. As the night deepened, the potters tended the fires with unwavering focus, their tunics now marked by streaks of soot that told stories of dedication. They drew on traditions passed down through oral tales and demonstrations, ensuring each firing honored the spirits of the craft. The sensory tapestry grew richer, the soft glow illuminating the veins in the stone kilns, the quiet rustle of tunics as bodies shifted in the warmth, the earthy taste of smoke on the tongue. In one corner, a younger artisan watched intently, his eyes reflecting the flames, learning the subtle art of balance where too much heat could warp a vase and too little left it fragile. This method, as evidenced by Knosso's excavations, involved multiple stages of firing, perhaps beginning with a slow rise to drive out moisture, followed by a sustained peak to fuse the clay particles. Yet amid the serenity, there lingered that elusive mystery, a whisper of what had been forgotten. The Minoans, as revealed in the archaeological layers, had achieved colors and finishes that modern eyes could only admire from fragments deep blues that mimicked the sea, or iridescent blacks that seemed to hold starlight. How had they controlled the kiln's atmosphere so precisely? Using perhaps natural vents aligned with the wind's direction, or secret additives gleaned from the island's minerals. These enigmas, distinct from the daily rhythms of the workshop or the gathering of clay, added a layer of intrigue, like a half-told story that soothed rather than startled. The potters themselves might have smiled at such thoughts, their subtle wit painting the unknowns as playful guardians of their trade. Hours turned to what felt like an eternal embrace, the kiln's heat ebbing and flowing like the tide. The artisans waited patiently, their senses attuned to every nuance, the softening crackle as the fire stabilized, the faint aroma of resinous smoke that evoked the island's wild hills, the gentle warmth that enveloped them like a well-worn blanket. Historical examples from Knossos, such as the remains of large-scale kilns, indicate that these techniques were not mere chance, but refined practices, possibly adapted from earlier Cycladic influences, yet uniquely Minoan in their precision. One could imagine the potters drawing inspiration from the natural world, mirroring the sun's cycle in their firing schedules, a method that blended human ingenuity with the island's rhythms. As dawn approached, the fires began to dim, the vases emerging from their fiery slumber hardened and transformed. The potters, their tunics now a tapestry of the night's work, carefully extracted the pieces, their hands steady and sure. The air carried a final waft of cooling smoke, mingling with the fresh scent of morning dew. In this moment, the mystery of the lost methods lingered like a soft echo, a reminder that some arts remain just beyond reach, preserved in the quiet folds of history. And as the first light touched the hills, the story of these ancient techniques faded into the promise of another day, leading gently toward tales yet to unfold. In the gentle hush of a sun-dappled courtyard on Crete, where the air carried the faint salt tang of the sea, Minoan potters moved with the quiet rhythm of waves lapping at the shore. It was the 17th century BCE, a time when the island's hills whispered secrets of an ancient world, and artisans shaped clay into vessels that danced with life. Here, under the soft light filtering through olive branches, men and women in simple linen tunics bent over their work, their fingers tracing patterns born from the depths of the ocean. The clay spun smoothly on wooden wheels, cool and yielding beneath their palms, as if the earth itself sighed in contentment. These potters, with their sun-kissed skin and steady gazes, embodied the quiet artistry of Knossos, drawing inspiration from the marine world that surrounded their island home. They wore tunics of undyed wool, light as a breeze, draped loosely to allow the warmth of the day to embrace them. The fabric whispered against their movements, a soft rustle that blended with the distant calls of seabirds. In their hands, they held brushes made from the finest goat hair, their tips as delicate as sea foam, dipping into pigments ground from minerals and ochre. The paints, mixed with water from nearby springs, released a subtle aroma, earthy and metallic, like the scent of wet stones after a rain, mingled with the faint, acrid fumes of heated linseed oil that lingered in the air. As they worked, the potters focused on marine motifs, those timeless designs that captured the essence of Crete's vibrant seas. Octopuses with curling tentacles sprawled across the curving surfaces of vases, their forms rendered in swirling lines of deep blue and black. Dolphins leaped in graceful arcs, their bodies etched with fluid strokes that evoked the playfulness of waves. The artisans painted with a meditative precision, each brushstroke a gentle caress, as if coaxing the stories of the deep into the clay. The soft bristles glided smoothly, leaving trails that dried slowly under the warm sun. The paint's texture slightly tacky at first, inviting a moment's pause to admire the emerging patterns. One potter, a woman named Alara, though history has left her name to gentle speculation, sat cross-legged on a low stool, her tunic gathered around her knees. She selected a large storage jar, its surface still damp from the kiln, and began to outline a school of fish. The brush in her hand was worn from use, its handle smooth and warm, polished by countless hours of creation. As she worked, the pigment's earthy scent grew stronger, a comforting reminder of the minerals quarried from the island's hills. The air around her hummed with a quiet energy, the faint scratch of brush on clay mingling with the distant murmur of the sea, creating a symphony of subtle sounds that lulled the senses into peace. In this era, the decorative styles of Minoan potters reflected a profound connection to nature, drawing from the creatures that thrived in Crete's waters. The marine motifs were not mere adornments, but symbols of abundance and mystery, inspired by the artifacts unearthed at Knossos. Their excavations have revealed vases adorned with similar designs, their colors preserved in the earth for millennia. The potters used a technique called cammer's wear for some pieces, layering glossy slips of clay to create a lustrous finish. Though for these marine scenes, they favored a more matte approach, allowing the details to emerge with understated elegance. A favorite motif was the stylized octopus, its tentacles radiating outward like the arms of a starfish, painted in bold yet flowing lines that suggested movement frozen in time. The process was one of patient repetition, each artisan lost in the flow of their craft. A young man, his tunic sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms dusted with clay, mixed fresh pigments in a shallow bowl. The colors, vibrant reds from iron oxides, deep blues from cobalt stones, blended with a satisfying swirl. Their textures, gritty yet pliable. As he worked, the fumes from the pigments rose gently, a light haze that softened the air and carried a whisper of antiquity. He paused to test the consistency, dipping his finger into the mixture and feeling its cool slip against his skin, a tactile pleasure that spoke of creations quiet joy. These designs, so intricate and alive, held a subtle wit in their execution. One might imagine the potters sharing a knowing smile as they exaggerated the curl of a dolphin's fin, a playful nod to the sea's unpredictability. Yet beneath the surface lay a deeper layer, for not all motifs were as straightforward as they seemed. The mystery of unrecorded designs lingered like a shadow on the water, designs that may have been passed down through whispers or fleeting inspirations, never etched into the annals of time. At Knossos, fragments of pottery have surfaced with patterns that defy full explanation, elaborate whorls, and abstract forms that hint at lost traditions, perhaps variations on marine themes that evolved in hidden workshops or during solitary moments of innovation. These unrecorded designs, elusive as the tides, add an enchanting layer to the potter's world, inviting wonder about what might have been forgotten. As the day wore on, the courtyard filled with the soft glow of afternoon light, casting long shadows that danced across the finished faces. The potters' tunics, now speckled with flecks of paint, moved in harmony with their breathing, each exhalation a gentle release. The brushes, soft and yielding, continued their work, their strokes evoking the rhythm of the sea undulating lines that captured the grace of jellyfish or the sinuous form of eels. Sensory details enveloped the scene. The warm weight of the clay under fingertips, the faint metallic taste on the tongue from inhaled pigments, the soothing sound of water being poured to rinse brushes, its trickle like a lullaby. In historical accounts drawn from Knossos finds, such as the marine-style pottery dated to this period, artisans favored asymmetry in their designs, allowing the motifs to flow organically around the vessel's curves. A vase might feature a central octopus encircled by smaller sea creatures, each element balanced yet free, mirroring the natural world's harmony. This style, evident in artifacts like those from the Palace of Knossos, showcased the Minoan's mastery, with pigments applied in thin, even layers that dried to a matte finish, preserving the artwork's vibrancy for ages. Yet, amid this beauty, the mystery persisted. What of the designs that never made it to the kilns? Those sketched in the sand or imagined in dreams. Perhaps a potter, inspired by a rare sighting of a bioluminescent creature, attempted a glowing effect with iridescent shells ground into pigment, only for the idea to vanish with the evening mist. Such enigmas, grounded in the sparse records of Knossos, lend a poetic intrigue to the craft, reminding us that not all creativity leaves a trace. The potters worked on, their movements a tranquil dance. As the sun began its descent, the air grew cooler, carrying the fresh scent of evening blooms, and the paint fumes faded into a pleasant memory. In these moments, one could almost hear the seas whisper through the motifs, a subtle wit in the way a fish's eye seemed to wink from the clay. As the last brush stroke settled, the courtyard fell into a deeper calm, bridging the past and the present in a thread of timeless artistry. And so, as the stars emerged over Crete, casting a silvery light on the finished vases, we prepare to drift from this serene world of pottery to the next quiet chapter, where other mysteries of the ancient isle await their turn in the story. In the gentle haze of a Cretan dawn, where the sea whispered secrets to the ancient shores, Minoan potters gathered in the bustling ports of Knossos. The air carried the faint tang of salt, mingling with the earthy scent of sun-baked clay, as artisans in simple linen tunics moved with deliberate grace. These craftsmen, their hands calloused from shaping vessels that held stories of distant lands, bartered their finely crafted vases under the soft glow of the morning light. The world turned slowly here in the 17th century BCE, where trade was a rhythmic dance of exchange, and the breeze carried the faint clink of pottery like a lullaby across the waves. The potters stood in clusters along the wooden docks, their tunics fluttering lightly in the warm wind that carried hints of thyme and wild oregano from the hills above. Each man or woman bore a selection of vases, some tall and elegant for holding olive oil, others wide-mouthed for wine, all unmarked by the elaborate patterns that defined other aspects of Minoan life. They spoke in low, melodic tones, their voices blending with the rhythmic lapping of the sea against the hulls of waiting ships. A young potter named Hector, his face weathered yet serene, held up a slender vase, its smooth curves catching the sunlight like polished stone. For your finest linens, he murmured to a merchant from the Egyptian delta, his words laced with a subtle wit, as if the vase itself might whisper its value. The bartering unfolded with the patience of the tides, a soothing ritual under the vast, cloud-streaked sky. Sensory details enveloped the scene. The cool, salty spray that kissed the skin, the soft crunch of sand beneath sandaled feet, and the occasional gull's cry echoing like a distant sigh. In these ports, trade was not hurried. It was a conversation between cultures, where a vase might be exchanged for ingots of tin or bundles of dyed wool. Archaeological whispers from sites like Crete and Phaistos suggest that Minoan potters traveled widely, their wares finding homes in Cyprus and beyond, carried on ships that creaked gently in the harbor. The potters' tunics, dyed in muted earth tones, rustled as they gestured, drawing attention to the pottery's subtle strength vases that spoke of utility and beauty without ostentation. As the sun climbed higher, casting a golden veil over the waters, the air filled with the faint aroma of roasting fish from nearby stalls, a comforting backdrop to the exchanges. One potter, an elder with a quiet demeanor, bartered a set of storage jars for rare spices from the Anatolian coast. His voice, soft and rhythmic, carried a hint of amusement. These jars have held the island's secrets for generations. Surely they deserve something as elusive as your saffron. The mystery of unrecorded trade logs lingered in such moments, a shadow in the sunlight. Unlike the inscribed tablets that detailed palace inventories. Much of this portside commerce slipped into oblivion, lost to the winds and waves. Archaeological reports from excavations at Kamos reveal fragments of pottery mingled with foreign artifacts, hinting at networks that extended far beyond what was etched in clay or stone. Yet the true extent of these trades remains veiled, a gentle enigma that invites contemplation, as if the sea itself guarded the ledgers. In the midst of the bartering, the potters paused to share simple meals, fresh figs, and barley bread under the shade of olive trees that lined the port. The texture of the bread, warm and grainy against the tongue, contrasted with the smooth coolness of a water-filled vase, a sensory reminder of their craft's purpose. Ships from the Cyclades arrived, their sails billowing like sighs, and the potters negotiated with sailors, whose accents carried the salt of other shores. One exchange involved a cluster of vases for blocks of lapis lazuli, the deep blue stones glinting like forgotten stars. The process was methodical, almost meditative, with each agreement sealed by a nod and a shared smile. The clinking of pottery against crates providing a soothing cadence. Historical accounts, drawn from the careful analysis of shipwreck sites and harbor remains, paint a picture of Minoan Crete as a hub of maritime commerce. Reports from the Minoan Palace at Zacro indicate that potters like these were integral to the economy, their products traveling on trade routes that connected the Mediterranean world. Yet the unrecorded logs add a layer of intrigue, a subtle mystery that threads through the narrative like a hidden current. Why were these everyday exchanges not documented? Perhaps the potters preferred the anonymity of the sea, their deals woven into oral traditions that faded with time. In this, there is a calming wit, the idea that some histories are best left to the breeze, carried away like the scent of blooming myrtle on a summer evening. As afternoon light softened the port's edges, the bartering continued with a dreamlike flow. The potters' movements were fluid, their tunics swaying gently as they lifted vases to the light, revealing the faint iridescence of the clays firing. Sensory details abounded. The warm touch of sun-warmed stone underfoot, the distant hum of bees in the wildflowers, and the occasional splash of fish leaping in the harbor. One artisan, a woman named Cora with steady hands, traded a series of oil lamps for amber beads. Her voice, a soft murmur that seemed to echo the sea's rhythm. "These lamps have lit the nights of kings," she said with a faint smile, "but they'll brighten your home just as well." The mystery deepened here as archaeological evidence from Thura's volcanic ash layers suggests sudden disruptions in trade. Yet the potters persevered, their unlogged dealings a testament to resilience. The ports buzzed with a harmonious energy, where the clatter of unloading crates blended with the salty breeze caress. Potters from different Cretan regions converged, each bringing vases shaped in the distinctive Minoan wheel throne style, free from the decorative flourishes that marked other crafts. They bartered not just for goods, but for stories, tales of storms braved and harbors discovered, all wrapped in the soothing cadence of shared language. The air grew fragrant with the smoke of evening fires as merchants prepared to depart, leaving the potters to tally their gains under a sky streaked with lavender and gold. Through it all, the enigma of the unrecorded logs persisted, a gentle puzzle that archaeological reports only partially unravel. Sites like Gurnia yield pottery shards embedded in trade debris, suggesting exchanges that bypassed official records, perhaps to evade taxes, or simply because they were too fleeting for inscription. This mystery lends a lullaby like quality to the scene, a reminder that not all histories are meant to be fully known, much like the way the sea reveals and conceals its treasures with each tide. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the docks, the potters gathered their earnings bundles of fabric, metals, and spices, and prepared to return to their villages. The day's trades, though invisible in the annals, left an imprint in the air, a sensory tapestry of scents, sounds, and touches that lingered like a whispered tale. In this calm exchange of goods, there was a subtle wit to the Minoans' way. They built empires not with swords, but with the quiet strength of clay and commerce. And so, as the stars began to emerge, twinkling like distant ports, the narrative of trade in ancient Crete fades into the night, beckoning toward tales of other mysteries yet to unfold. In the fading light of a Cretan evening, where the sun dipped low over the azure sea, the air grew gentle and cool, carrying the faint scent of wild herbs and baked earth. Amidst the ancient hills of Knossos, a group of Minoan potters gathered in their shared workshop, their simple tunics of linen draping softly over sun-warmed skin. These artisans, weary from the day's labor, formed a circle not of obligation, but of quiet camaraderie, their bonds woven as intricately as the patterns on their clay vessels. Here, in this haven of stone and shadow, they shared meals that spoke of deeper connections, unspoken yet enduring, much like the mysteries that time has veiled from us. The potters, men and women alike, settled onto low stools carved from olive wood, their tunics fluttering slightly in the breeze that whispered through the open arches. The workshop hummed with a peaceful rhythm, the walls adorned with shelves of unfinished pots, elegant forms, glazed in hues of terracotta and ochre, inspired by the island's wildflowers and distant mountains. As they prepared their evening repast, the air filled with the soothing sizzle of fish grilling over a low flame, the flesh crackling gently as olive oil dripped and hissed, releasing aromas of salt and sea. One potter, an elder with lines etched deep into his face like the spirals on a ceremonial jug, tended the fire with a steady hand, his movements deliberate and graceful, as if conducting a silent symphony. Laughter drifted softly through the space, light and unhurried, like the ripple of waves on a calm shore, a younger artisan, her tunic tied with a cord of dyed wool, passed around flatbreads warm from the hearth, their surfaces dusted with crushed thyme that released a fragrant earthiness. With each touch, the group spoke in low tones, their words a gentle murmur that blended with the distant calls of nightingales outside. Remember the day the rains came early, one said, a subtle wit in his voice, as if the weather itself were an old friend with a penchant for surprise. They shared stories of harvests and festivals, not the grind of daily tasks, but the fleeting joys that bound them, those invisible threads of affection that archaeologists might glimpse in the arrangement of communal spaces, yet never fully unravel. As the fish was served on simple platters, its flaky texture yielding to their fingers, the potters savored the meal with a mindfulness that stilled the world around them. The taste was a melody of flavors. The slight char from the flames, the tang of lemon squeezed fresh from the groves, and the subtle bite of wild greens gathered from the hillsides. In these moments, the workshop transformed into a sanctuary, where the clink of clay cups against stone echoed like a lullaby. One cup, perhaps crafted by the elder's own hands, bore faint impressions of leaves, a design drawn from the patterns found in the palace of Minos, where such artifacts reveal the artistry born of collective inspiration. Yet amid this serenity, there lingered a quiet mystery, the enigma of unwritten friendships, those ephemeral alliances that left no mark on stone or clay, but shaped the very fabric of their lives. In the ruins of Minoan settlements, excavators have uncovered hearths and dining areas that suggest these gatherings were commonplace, as seen in the remains at Frescoes, where fragments of communal pottery hint at shared feasts. But what of the laughter that faded into the night, the knowing glances exchanged over a meal? These bonds, inferred from the clustering of homes around workshops, remain elusive, like shadows dancing on cavern walls. Perhaps it was the way one potter would adjust another's tunic before a gathering, a gesture as fleeting as the evening mist, or the shared silence during a storm, when words were unnecessary. Such mysteries tease the imagination, for while we have the tangible evidence of their world vases depicting figures in harmonious assembly, we can only wonder at the depth of their unspoken loyalties, untouched by the scribe's tools. The potters ate slowly, drawing out the meal as the sky darkened to a deep indigo, stars emerging like scattered jewels. A soft breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine from nearby terraces, mingling with the lingering warmth of the fire. One woman, her tunic embroidered with subtle threads of saffron, hummed a melody under her breath, a tune passed down through generations, its notes weaving through the air like a gentle spell. The others listened, their expressions softened by the firelight, each face a canvas of quiet contentment. In this ritual, there was a subtle wit to their interactions. A potter might tease another about a lopsided pot from years past, not with sharpness, but with the fond affection of old companions, like recalling a shared dream that never quite faded. As the night deepened, the group lingered, their tunics now rumpled from the evening's ease, the workshop enveloped in a cocoon of tranquility. Archaeological evidence from sites like Crete on nearby Thura, with its preserved frescoes of communal life, suggests that such bonds were not merely functional, but essential, fostering resilience in a world of uncertainties. Yet the mystery persists. How did these friendships endure beyond the clay and stone? Were they forged in the quiet hours after labor, over meals like this, where the sizzle of roasting chestnuts added a nutty sweetness to the air, their shells cracking open like secrets shared? One could imagine the elder potter, his eyes twinkling with subtle humor, recounting tales of ancient rituals, his voice a soothing cadence that lulled the listeners into a peaceful haze. The air grew cooler, carrying the faint, earthy aroma of damp soil from the fields beyond, a reminder of the island's fertile embrace. The potters spoke of the stars, their conversations drifting like smoke from the dying fire, each word infused with a calming rhythm. In the soft laughter that followed a witty observation, perhaps about the way the wind shaped the island's hills. Much like their hands shaped clay, they revealed the strength of their community, a tapestry woven from shared experiences rather than grand deeds. This was the essence of their bonds, evident in the archaeological traces of Minoan society. The proximity of living quarters to workshops, the communal artifacts that spoke of togetherness without explicit declaration. As the fire ebbed to glowing embers, casting a warm glow on their tunics, the potters rose slowly, their movements deliberate and unhurried. The night air was now laced with the sweet scent of night-blooming flowers, their petals unfurling in the darkness like silent confidants. In these final moments, the mystery of unwritten friendships deepened, a gentle enigma that archaeologists ponder through fragments of daily life, such as the shared tools or the patterns of wear on pottery that suggest repeated, intimate use. It was a bond that transcended the physical, much like the way the sea's whisper lingered long after the waves receded. With a collective sigh, the group dispersed into the night, each carrying the warmth of the evening in their hearts. As they stepped into the cool embrace of the Cretan darkness, one might glance back at the workshop, its shadows holding the echoes of their gathering. And so, as this tale of quiet connections draws to a close, it leaves room for what comes next, the broader rhythms of an ancient world waiting to unfold. Word count 1502. In the soft glow of a 17th century BCE Cretan dawn, the air hung heavy with the earthy scent of fresh clay and distant sea breezes. As Minoan potters stirred from their workshops to honor ancient rites, these artisans, clad in simple tunics of woven linen dyed in earthy ochres, moved with a quiet purpose toward the stone-carved shrines nestled among the olive groves and wild thyme. Far from the clamor of daily labor, This was a time of devotion, where hands that shaped vessels for the living turned to offerings for the unseen. The potters approached with baskets balanced on their shoulders, each one filled with small clay figures, meticulously crafted idols of bulls, serpents, and abstract forms that echoed the island's fertile mysteries. These figurines, still warm from the kiln's gentle heat, represented not mere craftsmanship, but a bridge to the divine. At the shrines of Knossos, where archaeological whispers revealed traces of ritual altars and votive deposits, the artisans knelt on cool, uneven stones, their tunics brushing against the ground like whispers of fabric in the wind. The air carried the faint, resinous aroma of incense, wisps curling upward, their smoke tracing lazy patterns toward the sky, as if carrying prayers on invisible threads. One by one, the potters placed their offerings with deliberate care, their movements rhythmic and unhurried, like the ebb and flow of the nearby sea. A young artisan, his tunic frayed at the edges from hours at the wheel, extended a small bull figurine toward the shrine's central pillar, its surface etched with faint spirals that mimicked the labyrinthine patterns found in the Knossos excavations. The stone altar, worn smooth by generations of similar gestures, absorbed the gift with silent acceptance. Soft chants rose from their lips, not booming hymns, but murmurs like a lullaby to the earth, itself repetitive syllables in the ancient Minoan tongue, blending with the rustle of leaves and the distant bleat of goats. These chants, historians suggest from the artifacts unearthed at Knossos, invoked deities of fertility and craft, perhaps the goddess associated with the peak sanctuaries, though her name has faded into the mists of time as the sun climbed higher, casting a golden haze over the scene. The potters paused to light small oil lamps, their flames flickering like shy fireflies in the dappled shade. The warmth of the fire kissed their skin, a subtle reminder of the kiln's embrace, while the scent of burning herbs, sage, and myrtle, gleaned from the hillsides, mingled with the incense, creating a tapestry of aromas that enveloped the gathering. One could almost feel the clay's memory in the air, the cool dampness of it under fingertips, shaped not just by human hands, but by rituals passed down through unwritten lore. In these moments, the potter's world narrowed to the sensory, the soft crunch of gravel underfoot, the faint taste of salt on the breeze from the Cretan coast, and the gentle weight of tradition pressing upon them like a favorite blanket. Yet, amid this serene devotion, a quiet mystery lingered, as elusive as the smoke that curled away unseen. The rituals of these Minoan potters, documented only through the silent testimony of Knossos' shrine finds, scattered clay offerings, and ritual vessels, remained largely unwritten, their full meanings lost to the ages. What precise words were whispered in those chants? What unseen forces did the clay figures appease? Perhaps the potters sought blessings for their crafts, protection from the earth's whims, or harmony with the natural world that sustained them. One might imagine, from the artifacts' subtle clues, that these offerings were tied to the cycles of creation and renewal. The potters mirroring the earth's own pottery in their devotions. This enigma, untouched by the scrolls of later civilizations, added a layer of gentle intrigue, a subtle wit in the universe's design, how the most profound acts often leave no trace, only echoes for us to ponder. The artisans continued their rites with unassuming grace, their tunics swaying as they circled the shrine in a slow, deliberate procession. Each step was measured, almost dance-like, evoking the frescoes from Knossos that depict similar figures in motion. Though here the scene unfolded in quiet reality. They poured libations of wine mixed with water from clay jugs, the liquid glistening as it trickled over the stones, carrying with it the faint, fruity tang that mingled with the herbal scents. The sound was a soft trickle, like a stream in the hills, soothing and rhythmic, drawing the mind into a peaceful trance. In these offerings, one sensed the potter's deep kinship with their materials, the clay drawn from the island's rich soil, fired in kilns that mimicked the sun's own heat, and now returned to the divine in a cycle as old as Crete itself. As midday approached, the chants softened further, blending into the hum of insects and the whisper of wind through the cypress trees. The potters sat back on their haunches, their eyes half closed in contemplation, allowing the sensory world to envelop them. The warmth of the sun on their skin, the earthy taste of dust on their lips from the kiln's residue, the visual play of light and shadow dancing across the shrine, all wove together into a lullaby of devotion. Historical fragments from Knossos suggest that such practices were commonplace among artisans, separate from the grander temple ceremonies, focusing instead on personal, craft-centered piety. These rituals, perhaps, served as a quiet rebellion against the uncertainties of life, a way to shape not just clay, but fate itself with steady hands. In the midst of this, a subtle wit emerged in the ritual simplicity, how these humble potters, with their everyday tunics and modest offerings, commanded a power as profound as any king's decree. The clay figures, some bearing faint impressions of fingerprints, spoke of human imperfection made sacred, a gentle reminder that divinity dwelt in the mundane. Yet the mystery persisted. What drove them to these unwritten acts? Were there hidden meanings in the spirals etched into the clay? Patterns that echoed the labyrinths of Knossos and hinted at deeper, unrecorded lore. Scholars, piecing together the shrine's artifacts, propose that these rituals might have included elements of renewal, where broken pots were ritually mended or offered as symbols of resilience, though such ideas remain speculative, adding to the allure. As the afternoon light softened, the potters gathered their baskets once more, their tunics now dusted with the fine pollen of wildflowers that grew near the shrine. They exchanged soft words, not in boisterous fellowship, but in murmurs that faded like echoes, leaving the space to its solitude. The incense had burned low, its last wisps dissolving into the air, while the chants lingered as a faint memory in the mind. In this gentle close, one could feel the weight of history. The potter's practices a thread in the vast tapestry of Minoan life, woven with care and left for us to unravel. And so, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the sacred stones, the rituals of the Minoan potters drew to a peaceful end, their mysteries intact, inviting reflection on the unseen forces that shape our world. From here, we turn our thoughts to the next whisper of ancient Crete. In the soft glow of a Cretan dawn, where the sea whispered against the ancient shores of Knossos, the Minoan potters stirred from their modest dwellings, clad in simple tunics of linen, woven with threads of earth-toned dyes. These artisans moved through their workshops with a quiet rhythm, their hands already attuned to the day's gentle demands. The air carried a faint haze of clay dust, fine as morning mist, settling on skin and fabric like a second, invisible layer. Amid this haze, they turned to the herbs, those faithful allies gathered from the island's wild hillsides, to tend to the subtle aches and strains of their craft. The potters knew well the toll of their work, for the dust that danced in sunbeams could linger in the lungs, a reminder of the earth's embrace. Yet, in this world of 17th century BCE Crete, remedies were woven into the fabric of daily life, drawn from the verdant fields and rocky outcrops that surrounded their communities. One might find an artisan pausing at a low stone basin, crushing leaves of thyme between calloused fingers, releasing an aroma that mingled with the workshop's earthy scent. The steam from a simmering pot of water, infused with marjoram and sage, rose in gentle curls, wrapping around the room like a warm shawl. Inhaled deeply, and the air became a soothing balm, carrying hints of mint's cool sharpness and lavender's sweet lull, easing the tickle in the throat that came from hours bent over spinning wheels. These practices, passed down through generations, were as much a part of the potter's toolkit as the clay itself. A young apprentice, his tunic dusted with the pale ochre of unfired vessels, might mix a paste of honey and crushed fennel seeds, applying it to chapped hands, roughened by the wheel's constant turn. The honey's golden stickiness offered a momentary reprieve, its sweetness a subtle wit against the day's labors, as if the bees themselves conspired to soften the edges of hardship. In the quieter corners of the workshop, older masters shared whispers of elderberry infusions, brewed to ward off the fatigue that settled in the bones after long days shaping amphorae and cups. The liquid, warm and slightly tart, slid down the throat like a river's gentle flow, carrying away the invisible burdens of inhaled particles that no eye could see. Archaeological traces from sites like Akrotiri and Phaistos reveal how these remedies were not mere happenstance, but a refined knowledge, etched into the very soil of Minoan culture. Fragments of painted pottery depict figures in similar tunics, holding bundles of herbs, their forms rendered in the flowing lines of frescoes that speak of a society attuned to nature's rhythms. The potters, ever practical, ground wild oregano into oils, massaging it into weary muscles with a touch as light as the island breeze. The oil's herbaceous scent, sharp yet comforting, filled the air, blending with the subtle grit of clay underfoot, creating a sensory tapestry that soothed both body and mind. One could almost hear the faint rustle of leaves in the wind, a natural symphony accompanying the quiet hum of work. Yet amid this harmony, there lingered a mystery, one that archaeologists today ponder with a mix of wonder and regret. The lost recipes of these ancient healers scattered across the ruins. Shards of inscribed tablets hint at formulas long vanished, their symbols faded like dreams at dawn. Perhaps a remedy for the persistent coughs that plagued the workshops involved a blend of rosemary and sea salt, dissolved in warmed olive oil. Its vapors inhaled to clear the airways, the salt's briny tang, drawn from Crete's surrounding waters, added a layer of depth to the rosemary's pine like freshness. A combination that might have been recorded in perishable scrolls, now turned to dust. These secrets, never fully captured in the durable clay that the potters mastered, tease the modern mind with their absence. What precise measures of hyssop and chamomile were used to brew teas that restored vigor after days of kiln fires? The enigma lies not in grand tales, but in the everyday, a subtle wit in how such knowledge slipped away, leaving only echoes in the earth. In the workshop's dimmer light, as the sun arched toward midday, the potters would gather around a shared fire, steeping leaves of verbena in clay mugs still warm from the kiln. The steam rose, carrying a citrusy aroma that cut through the persistent dust, inviting a moment of pause. One artisan, with a wry smile hidden beneath his beard, might quip that the herbs worked their magic because they, too, had endured the sun's harsh gaze. A gentle nod to the resilience shared between plant and person. Such remedies extended beyond the immediate. For the eye strained from peering at fine designs, they applied cool compresses of mint leaves, the chill seeping into tired lids like a whispered lullaby. The mint's invigorating tingle, paired with the soft crush of its leaves, offered a sensory escape, turning potential discomfort into a fleeting pleasure. Historical records, pieced together from excavations at sites like Gurnia, suggest that these practices were informed by observations of the natural world, where plants' properties were noted through trial and generations of use. A potter might crush garlic bulbs into a paste, mixing it with honey for a poultice against minor cuts from sharp tools, the pungent aroma filling the air with a sharpness that spoke of protection. This blend, with its warming sensation on the skin, exemplified the Minoan's intuitive understanding, avoiding the more esoteric rituals that colored other aspects of life. The focus remained on the tangible, the herbs' colors and textures becoming part of the sensory palette. The vibrant green of parsley, the velvety leaves of mullein for respiratory ease, each element contributing to a ritual of care that was both practical and poetic. As evening approached, the workshops quieted, the air growing cooler and carrying the faint scent of eucalyptus, perhaps used in a final infusion to promote restful sleep. The potters, their tunics now marked with the day's labors, would retreat with a simple brew, its earthy notes lulling them into tranquility. Here, in these moments, the mystery of the lost recipes deepened. For what if those ancient formulas held keys to ailments we still face? Archaeologists, sifting through soil and fragments, uncover hints a charred seed, a faint inscription, but the full tapestry remains elusive, a gentle enigma that invites contemplation rather than frustration. Through it all, the sensory world of the Minoan potter unfolded like a soft narrative, where the warmth of herbal steams and the whisper of clay dust created a calming rhythm. One might imagine the subtle play of light on polished vessels, the air alive with the faint